Joining us now, we have MSNBC host Symone Sanders Townsend and the co-founder and CEO of All In Together, Lauren Leader. Lauren, you have a recent op-ed in The Hill. It's entitled "State Republicans Have Gone from Opposing Democrats to Opposing Democracy." And you write in part this: too many Republican-controlled legislatures have gone from opposing Democrats to opposing democracy itself. This didn't happen overnight. Years of investment and aggressive gerrymandering have led to veto-proof Republican supermajorities in 20 state legislatures, while Democrats hold supermajorities in just 9. Moreover, Republicans hold trifectas, governorship, and both state houses in 22 states and control 58 out of 99 state legislative chambers across the country. In at least 4 states, Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, Republicans are also profoundly overrepresented in state governments relative to the voter party affiliation. This outsized, unrepresentative power has huge implications for 2 of the most urgent issues facing the country today: gun control and abortion access, both life and death issues where Americans are largely united. And Lauren, I will say it for you, what All In Together does, we want to get women to run because we see what's happening. Like Michelle Lujan Grisham sees what's happening. A lot of the female governors in office today saw what was happening and said, you know what, not going to wait for someone else to do it for us, women. Gonna have to do it myself. We need women to run.
We really do. And what I think is so important is that across the board, we need women running in the state legislatures, probably now more than we ever have in the last decade. And it's critically important, and the point that I made in the piece, that the Democratic Party infrastructure supports candidates that are running in state legislatures. You know, in Florida, just as one example, 45 of the state leg seats in the 2022 cycle ran completely unopposed. Nobody ran against those seats. When you look around the country, unfortunately, Republicans have been way ahead of Democrats on state legislatures for years, and there's a lot of catch up to be done. Republicans outspent Democrats 2-1 on state legislature investments in the last cycle. And then you look at the sort of the gerrymandering that's happened everywhere: North Carolina, South Carolina, Ohio. I mean, the list just is long, and it's going to take a massive coordinated effort to make sure that the seats are fairly drawn, that we are, you know, Democrats are fighting where maps are gerrymandered beyond what is representative of their people. But fundamentally, Mika, absolutely, like, we need more women in state legislatures. Last thing I'll say, look at the effect of what happened in South Carolina, the coalition of both, interestingly, both Republican and Democratic state senators in women state senators in South Carolina that have been instrumental in protecting reproductive rights in that state. So, you know, it's never been more important that we focus on these state legislatures. They're underfunded and sort of underinvested in by Democrats.
And Symone, chime in. It seems to me sometimes women are reticent to step up and, you know, don't know if they are qualified or this, and they think about all the issues, and men just jump in even though they're duly unqualified. What is your message to any woman who has the time to run for office, especially in local and state elections?
Look, I think it's important to do. When I graduated from college, Mika, I worked as a community organizer because I graduated, you know, in the Obama years, and it was popular to be a community organizer. And I was a communications manager in Omaha, Nebraska, and we worked with organizations, entities, but also elected officials. And so getting folks on, working with the city council representatives, working with young people who were interested in getting engaged and involved in running for office. What Lauren is saying about the state legislatures is extremely important. It wasn't until last year that I heard national figures of in the Democratic Party talk about the importance of state legislatures. I remember my first guest on my show, the First Lady, Dr. Biden. She said, we got to invest in state legislatures. And I'm like, when is the last time we heard that? There is an entity that is focused on that, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. And, you know, if you were to talk to the head of that committee, they would say that they don't usually get support support like the other parties' committees get, like the DNC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, or the DSCC, which deals with electing members to the Senate. And so supporting the entities, for folks out there who are interested, you have to know who are the entities that get that recruit and help fund some of these elections, and have a laser focus on the states, and particularly state legislatures, because that's where America's policy is made.
So, Lauren, let's talk about the electorate right now. And suburban women in particular seem to be maybe the most important swing group. That's enough of them broke for Trump in 16 to give him the White House. They broke hard back for Biden in 20. Polls suggest right now that group is not super enthusiastic about either of those options. But is the sense of it that because of these issues, even if not candidates, because of issues like guns and abortion, they'll stay in the Democratic column this time around?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're about to field some polls. I'll come back in another week or so and talk about them, because we've been looking at this, and especially the sort of right of center women in the suburbs, as well as other, sort of more Democratic leaning. And you're right, they have been swinging. But even if you go back to the 2018 election, when you look at the issue of guns and safety in schools, that was a hugely galvanizing issue in the 2018 midterms. There were lots of moms in the suburbs that said the lockdown drills were actually the thing that galvanized them. And then you look at just the extraordinarily effective organizing power of groups like Moms Demand, and then also what you've seen in the backlash against the Dobbs decision. Polls have been looking at this the wrong way. I think we looked at it mostly wrong in the 2022 midterms. We got to not just look at what are the top issues. The economy is always going to come up, but what are the galvanizing, motivating issues, the things that really get people out of bed and get them activated. And right now, there's no question that both abortion and gun control issues every day, these horrific stories of shootings, they're horrifying to so many voters, especially women, especially moms. They're going to be a force again in 24.
Simone, certainly the Supreme Court has become a significant topic of conversation in recent weeks, sort of the ethical questions raised by some of the justices. But I know you've been looking at some of their decisions of late and how they are shaping America right now. Tell us what you found.
Well, look, there are a number of decisions that are coming down from the Supreme Court sometime between now and midsummer, and I think Americans need to brace themselves. There are two cases before the Supreme Court that, on their face, look as though they are looking at the issue of affirmative action in admissions for colleges. But, this court has been poised to overreach. Remember, the Dobbs decision, the Dobbs case was not originally about overturning Roe v. Wade. It was about 15 weeks or not in Mississippi for abortions, and the court went so far as to overturn the Roe v. Wade decision and send the issue of abortion back to the states. In the particular case about admissions that I just raised, the Supreme Court could, if they rule in favor of the organization that brought these complaints, the Supreme Court could say that race-based decision-making is therefore unconstitutional. And so that's everything from special government contracts for minority-owned businesses to programs that corporations run to recruit at HBCUs. Those things could be in question. Lawmakers could say that African American history programs, Latino American history programs are illegal because they are unconstitutional because they are race-based. Hospitals, they could have to get creative and find ways to recruit for diverse doctors in order to avoid incurring liability. So that's just one case. Those are just two cases and examples of the real-life implications of what the Supreme Court could do in just a few months.